Okay, good morning, everybody. I'll just wait a few minutes for everybody to join in. Okay. Okay, everyone, we're going to get started now. So first and foremost, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's okay on this warm Wednesday on what I think is our third heat wave of the summer. So hopefully everybody's in a nice air-conned office. Let's get started on today's session. So today's session, why every business should have a cyber incident response simulation. First and foremost, cyber incident response simulation is quite a mouthful. So you'll probably hear it also be called things like BCP testing or IR plan testing. The terms are somewhat synonymous. There is a lot of crossover, but for the purposes of today, we'll try and use cyber incident response simulation. Okay. All right, let's get started. So today's agenda. Firstly, we'll be going over what actually is a cyber incident response simulation. We will go over some of the quick statistics and industry trends that we are seeing that are kind of guiding the kind of popularity of this service. We'll go over the reasons why your organization might want to consider having one of these engagements. And we'll also be going over some of the common gaps and misconceptions around the engagement. Now, the gaps are things maybe that we've discovered or encountered in engagements that we've done with customers. And then we'll round out with some practical takeaways. So without further ado, what actually is cyber incident response simulation? Well, cyber incident response simulation is usually led by an independent third party that assesses an organization's ability to detect, respond to, and recover from an attack. Now, usually this consists of the third party guiding an organization through an agreed upon scenario, and then they gradually increase the threat and impact level throughout the engagement. Common examples of scenarios would be like a phishing and ransomware. This is incredibly popular and is usually the most common type of attack that most organizations will experience. But you could also do scenarios around DDoS events or insider threats, for example. But again, that's can usually be tailored to the organization in question. Now, there are, of course, varying levels of realism. The most common type is a tabletop scenario. And usually when I say tabletop, most people think of sort of Dungeons and Dragons and Stranger Things, and it is somewhat similar in a way. However, there's less dice and wizards. It's usually involving most key stakeholders from a business around a table, discussing the actual scenario itself, and you get your main stakeholders, people like your CEOs, maybe your CTOs, perhaps your IT MSPs and other members of the senior leadership team, anyone that is going to be a key decision maker if an actual cyber event was to occur. So let's jump into some of the statistics that we're seeing across the industry and why this type of engagement is becoming more of a strong requirement. So first and foremost, 43% of businesses have experienced an attack or breach in the last 12 months. That's nearly half of the UK businesses alone. And only 25% of them actually have a formal incident response plan. So actually having the plan itself is just a quarter of UK businesses. Now, the quote just underneath I took from the Cybersecurity Breaches Survey 25 to 26. And I thought it would kind of hit the nail on the head there that only a minority of organizations reported comprehensive testing of incident response plans. And that's creating a false sense of preparedness. There is a very strong difference between having a plan and having actually executed and tested the plan. And then the last point that we see here is following a breach. 61% of businesses actually took preventative action to prevent future incidents. So what's the summary here? The summary here is don't wait. Don't wait until you've actually experienced an attack or a breach to actually make the improvements. Get ahead of the curve. Get yourselves an incident response plan created, get it tested so that your organization is well trained and prepared to deal with a future incident. Okay, so just by a way of virtual hands in the air, let's do a quick poll. And does your organization have an incident response plan? And we'll leave that up for just a few seconds to give everybody a chance to submit their responses. Perfect. I'm just going to check, see if I can see the responses. Give it a few more seconds. Okay, and now we've got the second one, which is going to be, has your organization tested the incident response plan in the last 12 months? Leave that up for a few seconds. Okay, perfect. So, what are some of the reasons why you might want to engage with a cyber incident response simulation? So, first and foremost, cyber insurers. So, we are seeing more and more frequently that cyber insurers are actually including it as part of the kind of the questionnaires and fact finding that they do. Um, and of course, this has impact on your premium prices, much like your car insurance and home insurance. And in this regard, it shows a organization's level of cyber maturity. So if you have an incident plan, you've tested the plan, you review it regularly, sort of every 12 months, you've got it tested, and you're being well practiced, it obviously looks very, very good to your insurers. So it can improve your premium prices. And as we know, with car insurance and home insurance, they are always looking for ways to increase our premiums. So this is a nice way to help bring them down just a touch. Another key reason is, of course, frameworks. Now, I've selected here in the slide just to use the cyber code of practice, but it's not just restricted to that framework. We've also got your NISTs, your ISOs that are all referencing it. I've just chosen to do cyber code of practice for now, and I think this quote's quite helpful because it says, gain assurance that there is at least annual exercising of the plan involving relevant internal and external stakeholders, and that lessons from the exercise are reflected in the incident plan and risk assessments. Now, if you do want to take a look at the cyber code of practice, of course, the link is at the bottom of the screen there. It's well worth having a look. The cyber code of practice does help give board level guidance on where their focus should be when it comes to cyber risk management. And of course, if you have any questions on those type of things, you can always liaise with ourselves or the team here if you do want to have a bit of a deeper discussion on those. But the point here is that most of the frameworks that are out there in the industry are asking that incident plans not only exist, but they are tested at least annually. Okay, key benefits from the actual engagement itself. So, of course, rehearsing your organization's response without real world consequences. Now, the ability for an organization and a team to be able to make mistakes in a safe environment is actually incredibly valuable. You don't want to be uncovering gaps and making those mistakes when you're in a live scenario, because that can have real consequences. I mean, we're talking, it could be financial implications. It could it could waste you a lot of time. It could very well impact your organization's reputation from your customers and or your suppliers. Next on this, you've got building decision-making confidence under pressure. Now, if anyone's had the pleasure of being involved in a cyber incident, a real one, they will know firsthand how stressful it can be. So being well practiced in the kind of decision matrix, if you will, of what needs to happen during a live incident helps alleviate that pressure a little bit more and gives you some more self-confidence because you know what needs to be done. You've been here before. Much like, I mean, we call our service personally, we call it fire drills, because there is a great comparison to a fire drill that you would do in your sort of your building, your schools, or wherever. So being able to know where you need to go, what you need to do at the right time really, really does help save you time and money in a real world incident. Thirdly, we've got eliminating ambiguity over roles and responsibilities. Knowing exactly what each team member needs to do before an incident starts helps avoid confusion, helps avoid things falling through the gaps. It helps again with time wasting. You hear me mention that a few times because every minute really does count when it comes to a live incident. It can be the difference between being back up and running in sort of 20 minutes, or it could be the difference between back up and running in sort of 24 hours. And lastly, you also gain understanding on your supplier's obligations. This is often overlooked, but gaining that understanding about what your IT MSP is actually going to be doing during an incident, or perhaps what your cyber insurer is going to be doing during a live incident. Understanding things like maybe they have response SLAs. What are you entitled to? Doing this in a live incident is a really, really bad time to find out that your, perhaps let's use the term bronze tier engagement with your MSP does not include out of hours response. And believe me, it really does happen. It's the worst time to find that out. So using these kind of simulated events is a much better way to uncover those gaps before you really, really do need it. So let's jump on to some other common gaps and misconceptions. So these are things obviously we've experienced in engagements that we've done, as well as other events that we've been made aware of throughout cyber incidents. So we've got four kind of main domains, if you will, that I've noticed in terms of these engagements. First and foremost is backups. So backups are kind of an oddity in themselves. Most organizations kind of hand over the keys to their IT team or their IT MSP. And that's that. They just kind of trust that they exist and they'll be there if they need them. But we often see comments like, I don't know when a restore event was last done. I don't know how long it takes to restore from backups. And these are key questions. So when you're mid-incident, it's a really bad time for you to find out that restoration process that your MSP claimed was sort of like a 10-minute, 20-minute job might actually take 24 hours or even longer. I mean, that's an extreme example, of course, but believe me, it really does happen. Or maybe worst case scenario, and sadly, I've seen this before, is the backups weren't actually functioning as expected, which, as you can imagine, has huge implications to the organization itself. Roles and responsibilities. So I touched on this a little bit earlier. We see comments around what's the difference between my insurer and what my IT MSP will do. So who's actually going to be diving into the logs and helping me with the actual forensic side of the incident? Who's going to be helping me with communications? Who do I actually need to speak to? Do I need to raise tickets? Do I need to engage, call people up on the phone? And then internally, of course, who owns X? Who owns communication to our customers? Who actually owns communication to our suppliers? Who owns liaising with the ICO? All of these types of questions that don't normally get asked in sort of day-to-day business. These are the things we look to try and uncover as part of these engagements. standardized communications. Now, this one's often overlooked and is actually incredibly valuable for the small amount of effort that actually goes into it. So when I say standardized communications, what I really mean here is trying to templatize, if I can actually call that as a word, trying to template as many of your responses and your inbound and outbound communications as possible to help save you time, provide consistency, um, and then also try and align the amount of information that's going in and out to the right relevant parties. Let me use an example. So if you're sending out communications to your end customers, obviously you want to be forthcoming with information on the cyber incident, but equally you don't want to overshare sometimes. You don't want to leave yourselves exposed. So having templates lined up and ready to go that you can kind of swap in and out of the core details, so whether it was a phishing attack, whether it was a DDoS event, whether it was an insider threat, obviously you can swap those finer details, but having a core response template is really, really valuable. And it helps eliminate those questions like, we don't know what to say, or who do we contact? So the who do we contact context, like who do we contact at the ICO? Who do we contact at our MSP? Things like that. And lastly, supplier obligations. Now, I've touched on this a couple of times already, but things like, does my IT MSP have 24/7 response? Sometimes organizations don't actually know. If an event was to happen out of hours, which most of the time they tend to happen at strange times outside of UK time zones, knowing who to call and who's actually available to be called, it can be incredibly valuable knowing that up front, because it can be very stressful if you can't get hold of someone who you thought was going to be available in your time of need. Things like, again, understanding how long it will take to recover from backups, who can take executive decisions, understanding how long you can operate as a business without the affected technology. All of these are key questions to understand outside of a real world event, because once you know the answers to those questions, it helps make that decision matrix a lot easier in the real world. Okay, let's round out with some practical takeaways. And I wanted to do this in kind of a logical flow. So for any organization that really doesn't know where to get started with this process, might be new. I mean, first of all, foremost, of course, you can always talk to myself and the team here at Mitigo, but here's something to get you started. So first and foremost, does your organization have an incident response plan? If the answer is no, you guessed it, create an incident response plan. After you've got that sorted, has that plan been reviewed in the last 12 months? The amount of organizations that we've spoken to, and they create an incident response plan, stick it in a filing cabinet somewhere, and it sits there gathering dust year after year and hasn't been updated. It's quite shocking. So please make sure once you've got it, make sure it's on your agenda to have that reviewed at the very least annually. I always like to say is if there's been any major changes in the business as well, like maybe key stakeholders, change of MSPs, things like that, change of insurers, because those points of contact, of course, always change as well, and they would likely to be included in your plan. So also use that as an opportunity to update your incident response plan. And if you haven't done that, of course, make sure that it's been being reviewed and being put on the business items for the SLT. And if you have, then you need to get it tested. So as I said at the start of this presentation, having a plan and having tested a plan are two very, very different things. So please, as for all the benefits that were just mentioned, make sure that you get it tested, get your organization prepared and ready to respond and well practiced to such cyber incidents. And if you don't, of course, get it tested. So I'll leave that on screen for just a second. I mean, obviously the slides are available to everyone. If you want to reference this afterwards, you can do. But as I round things out here on the presentation, just a reminder, obviously, we do many things here at Mitigo, not just, cyber incident response simulations. We do many, many things, as you can see on the screen. So if you do want to have a conversation with us about simulated attacks or anything else that you see, please get in touch. Obviously, myself, the team here at Mitigo, we're always happy to have a conversation with you. finally, before we wrap up completely, I've got a last final poll there for everyone. So if you are interested in a follow-up supporting either your incident response planning, you want to discuss over creating the document itself, or whether it's going into the testing side of things, or if there's anything else that was displayed on screen as part of our other service offerings, please feel free to get in contact with us or answer in the poll. And lastly then, that's thank you from me. That's my contact details. If you do want to reach out to me directly, please do. But apart from that, have a wonderful day. Enjoy the heat wave, and I'll hopefully be speaking to you all soon on the next webinar. Thank you all. Bye-bye.